Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Calvin Mosley. I am the Associate Director for Residence Life at the University of Florida.
Okay. And I'm Ryan Widget. I'm the Assistant Director of Housing for East Campus at the University of Florida. Thanks for coming to a session on death protocol to start off your day. We appreciate it.
So the title of our presentation is Student Death, Managing the Unthinkable. How many people in here have had to deal with a student death on their campus? Right. I think all of you can attest to the fact that it's not an easy thing to deal with. It's not an easy situation to deal with when you lose one of the members of your particular community. So it's at the University of Florida that we do after. We always want to make sure that we have some type of moment of silence for those individuals who we may have lost from our particular communities, be it in the next staff meeting or some particular point while we're doing the aftercare with the residents or with the staff. So that's how I want to start out today. So before we go any further, to pay honor to those who in our particular communities, I want to offer up a small moment of silence for each of those individuals. So do that now. Thank you guys for participating in that. That's once again one of the things that we feel is very important to kind of do to honor the memory of losing one of the ones that are community. We do have up-here tissues for anyone who probably like me is going to cry at some point throughout the course of this presentation, but they are here if you want some. Just we go like that now, bring some too. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get into the learning objectives for this. Are we going? All right. So in this won't be in anybody's way. So that's here. One of the first things we want to do is to have you gain a solid understanding of our death protocol as far as how we handle things there at the University of Florida. We're not saying that it's the greatest, but it has served us useful when dealing with this particular incident. We're also going to encourage you to take a look at your own protocol. I think that's probably one of the main reasons why you all have chosen to attend this particular session is to improve, and I think we all can improve our protocols as far as this is concerned, as well as to give you resources that you can use in the event of tragedy. And the last thing, we're going to try to leave some time at the end of this to kind of learn from you as well. One of the main things that Ron and I want to do with our particular protocol is to improve. So we want to hear what you do in certain situations. We want to learn from you just as much as you're sitting here listening to us today.
All right, so we're going to kind of run through a situation where we had a student, his name's Landon. He passed away on our campus last year. Landon was a first-year student. He was in the ROTC. He was well-known in Gainesville because he was a high school quarterback for the Eastside Rams, which is a high school in Gainesville. Didn't play football in college. Very, very good quarterback. I remember watching him on the coach of U-Hole, so I did see Landon play football. He passed away personal training with the ROTC on the University of Florida track. So we're going to kind of run you through. There was a lot that went into that. We're going to run you through our response to that situation, the university's response, but also the Department of Housing and Education's response. Prior to that, I do have our protocol that we passed out to all the RAs. I think this is one of the best protocols out there for crisis situations. Of course I do. I love this protocol. We break it down into behavioral situations and psychological situations, depending on what happens. That will tell the RA who to call first. But you didn't have to come here to learn about our crisis protocol. So I've made you copies. If you have questions about it, email me. I'll give you all a copy of it. If you have questions or anything, let me know. But I wanted to see that we do have a very good protocol in place for crisis situations. But I wanted to go over our layers of on-call, because I think you have to understand layers on call at the University of Florida for us to move forward, giving you the example of what happened with our student who passed away. We have something called nighttime security. Not a lot of places have this. They are not even Res Life. They operate out of administrative services. They are a group of student staff who go around and check the outside of the buildings and the doors from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. every night. They also call the RA on call to make sure the RAs pick up the phones, so they're, nobody's on call, right? So that's pretty neat. We have that at University of Florida, not a lot of places. I've never worked anywhere else that have that. It's really cool. We do have an RA on call in every single area on campus. They're on call for 12 hours. They go on call at 8 p.m. and they are off call at 8 a.m. every day, except on the weekends. On the weekends, it's once at 8 p.m. Friday through 8 a.m. Monday morning. So, but on the weeknights, they're just a 12-hour on call. We have a graduate on call. The University of Florida campus is split between East and West, Gale Limerick Drive. Those of you who are familiar with the University of Florida a long time ago, it's called North-South Drive. Meridian, it separates East Campus from West Campus. We have graduate hall directors who work on East Campus, graduate hall directors who work on West Campus. We have one graduate hall director on East Campus from Friday at 8 a.m. until the next Friday at 8 a.m. as well. So we do have a graduate hall director level of on-call. We have a professional staff member. These are the folks who are area coordinators. They're all area coordinators, and they are on call from 8 a.m. on Friday to 8 a.m. the next Friday as well. So there's several layers of on-call already, but we're not done yet. We have something also cool at the University of Florida called the Crisis Intervention Consultants, the CICs. Call 8 to 8, Friday to Friday as well. These are 3 students. They're master's level students in a counseling program. They're looking for some advanced counseling experience, and boy, do we provide it. Right? So they're on call from 8 to 8 if there's a student who is self-injurious, depressed, just having some emotions. We can call out the CIC. A lot of times we don't offer that as an option. We tell our students we're calling the CIC, and it's the CICs, you can turn them down, but we're bringing them out, and it's their job to kind of talk their way into the room, or to talk their way into getting, and they do a really good job. I've never seen a student turn away our CICs. They're that good at getting in and talking to the student and making a recommendation on how we should proceed through the rest of the night.
And if it's a housing situation, so the next day, they do follow up as well. So as opposed to having those students go to the counseling center, if they want to do that, they can, but those crisis intervention consultants, the very next day or the days after that, will follow up with those students as well, instead of those students having to go to our counseling center on campus.
That sounds like plenty of on-call, right? I'm not done yet, so more people on call. This is my level. So the senior staff consult in housing, that is the assistant directors and the associate director and director all share in a rotation. We're the senior staff consultants. So we are just there to answer questions, and if something really severe happens, we'll go to campus and help. Flood or fire, we will be there. But senior staff consult is another level. That's also 8 a.m. Friday to 8 a.m. the next Friday. We have victims advocates at the University of Florida. These are employees, full-time employees through the University of Florida Police Department. And there's 2 of them, 2 or 3. There's usually 2 or 3, and they are like legal consultants for students. They come into play a lot of times when the student's been sexually assaulted. We want the CIC and the victims advocate to talk to those students first. They're there to offer legal advice. They're there to tell them what they can and can't do, what their rights are. Very good. Anytime someone's been victimized, sexual assault comes to mind first. He got beat up at a bar one night and came back to the residence halls, and we brought out the victims advocate to talk to them about what their rights were. They got in a fight with the bouncer. So we do have victims advocates to offer legal advice, and they usually have counseling-esque backgrounds as well. We also have emergency maintenance, emergency custodial, and emergency IT. There is a dean and emergency on call as well at the University of Florida, and they're on call all week, just like with us, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then I mentioned that there's East Campus and West Campus, and then there's graduate student housing, which is everything that surrounds East and West Campus. There's 2,500 graduate students and families that live. They have their own on-call system, so we don't, East and West Campus doesn't cover that. They have their own GFH on-call. So I'm going to refer to some of these things later in the presentation, so we thought it could let you know who they are. So their CICs are going to be mentioned later, pro on-call, senior staff consults.
So with our particular protocol, there are 4 main areas. I'm going to stay over here so I can see the board. But there are four main areas: obviously notification, assessment, support, intervention, and aftercare. So with notification, that's basically who is involved in the communication of this particular incident. So we'll get into the specifics of these. So we're going to pass out at the end of this our specific protocol to this, but we thought it best during this particular presentation to go through it. But in this particular situation about Landon, just to kind of show you how we navigated our way through this particular incident, as opposed to reading a lot of terms off of our actual protocol to you, which would probably put you to sleep really quickly. So assessment basically, what's the scope of impact? What is our plan for support? Then support and intervention, how are we supporting our students, as well as staff who are involved in it. Then the aftercare, how are we still taking care of our residents, our staff, anyone else who is involved with the particular incident. So notification, once again, how we learned about this particular incident. UPD notified the Dean of Students office. Now, whenever I've given this presentation before, we've been asked the question, why, if it's a residence hall student, why are UPD notifying the Dean of Students office as opposed to Housing and Residence Education? So in this particular situation, there's two reasons. One, it was not in a residence hall, but even if it is in a residence hall, the UPD, the way their protocol states is they do contact the Dean of Students in that particular situation. We have an excellent relationship with our Dean of Students. So as soon as they're contacted, they're probably taking the other phone out of their pocket and calling Housing and Residence Education to alert us to it as well. So them calling the Dean of Students office is just like them calling us, basically. And so that's essentially the protocol. Also the Dean of Students, because they have a link to the office and with our public relations office. So a lot of those things are now beginning to kind of go into effect as far as the messages we're going to be sending out a little bit later on. So the Dean of Students office then notifies more than likely the director of residence life in this particular situation. That is what happened. Then the director of residence life notified the residence life senior staff consultant. Like Ryan said, we're using a lot of the terms that are in our protocol. We then contact the area professional staff as well as the early pro staff on call. The reason why we contact both, obviously the area professional staff members, because it's happening to a student in their particular area. So we want to make sure that they know about it, as well as the grad assistant, as well as the RAs, because more likely they will have to act well beyond once we're done dealing with this particular situation. And then just as part of our protocol, we contact the residence life professional staff member on call also. Obviously, in these situations, we're dealing with it not necessarily on the same day of, but multiple days as well. So we want to make sure that the area professional is involved, as well as the RLE professional, to make sure that we're covering all of our bases as far as professional staff who are on call. And then somewhere in there also, not necessarily last, but as this is happening, as you can imagine, the Counseling and Wellness Center are probably called well before where we have them listed right here. We just have them listed because we do additional follow-up with them as well as needed to help us with particular points of this particular situation. Assessment, once again, we try to be as immediate and as swift as possible as far as handling and dealing with these particular situations. So as soon as we learn about it, we're in action, we're in route, we're in total support mode as far as making sure that everything is taken care of. So we do roommate notifications, particularly by the counselor, as well as assistant director, area coordinator. In this particular situation, once we learned about it, we did this by 12:50 p.m. So fairly quickly after we learned about it. We are also in rapid communication with our public relations office to draft emails to residents to make sure that we are notifying the community that we have lost a member of our community, and we drafted that by 2 p.m. Sent to immediate communities. We waited to send to all the residents on campus until after the community meeting. One of the main reasons we do this because that it takes a minute for our mass residence email to go out. So there has to be permission to do that. So we draft the email, we send it to our administrative services team. Then there's a period of wait time as far as when we can actually send that out. But just as a symbol of respect, we feel that it's a little bit more important to let the members of the immediate community know, as opposed to sending it out to the entire, all the residents on campus. We then do suite mate notifications depending on which type of residence hall it is. And once again, that's completed by counselor, assistant director, and area coordinator. In this particular situation was this by 2:20 p.m. Then most important thing that we do is immediately we schedule the community meeting to take place 6 or 7 o'clock at night, depending on when we learned about it, as well as other things that may be going on campus that particular night. Generally, the staff in attendance are assistant directors, area coordinators, as well as members from the counseling center, and definitely our crisis intervention consultants. And depending on who's available, there may be more people there also. So if I'm available, regardless if I'm on call or not, I'm still going to go there and kind of help out in any way, shape, form, or fashion I can. So in this particular situation, it just so happens to be senior staff consultant, assistant directors, area coordinators, and members from the counseling center and crisis intervention consultants.
And if you're looking at that timeline, I just want to point out 12:50 p.m. the student passed away around 7 a.m. The reason we waited so long, and it does take a while to do all the notifications, is that he also had a little sister in high school days ago who they didn't want to find out on Facebook. So we didn't want to notify anyone until we had the clearance, which I think was okay. All right, so this wasn't an ROTC student, but we set up a command post whenever a student passes away. And this isn't something you want to go from good to great on, but we've gotten pretty good at it. We've had quite a few students who passed away, but first thing we do is set up a command post. Usually the Dean of Students Office will determine where that is in conjunction with the Director of Residence Life and Education. They'll tell us, here's our command post all day. So if it happens at Yulee Hall, we set up outside of Yulee or in a lounge at Yulee. This particular student was highly integrated into the ROTC community. Most of the friends were from the ROTC community. The people who were walking around crying because they knew about this were in the ROTC community. So we set up our command post at Van Fleet Hall, which is where ROTC takes place. We were actually in the Navy has a floor, so we were on the Navy floor in their lounge. Set up a command post there just to start trying to figure out who's going to need care, who's going to need concern, who are his friends, who did he hang out with, what communities did they live in, who did they know. We were trying to figure out his network in any way possible. So the command post was set up at Van Fleet. The people there were myself, Lisa Deco, and the Naval ROTC captain. His name's Captain Morgan, Jim Morgan. Yeah, all right. That's really well. And I'll never forget that meeting in my life because Captain Morgan looked at us and said, I'm so impressed with the way you handle crisis here in student affairs. He said, you handle crisis with military precision. And he said, that's a compliment. I said, I know, Captain. That is about as good of a compliment as we could receive, so thank you. The Dean's Students Office care team was there. There are some rumors that they're going to have some sort of memorial for Landon and one of his classes. We knew they were at least going to mention it to the class, so we thought it would be good to send a CIC to the class that day. Amanda Victims Advocate was available as well to go to the class as well. Nobody was a victim here, but they were available and they wanted to go. So we sent a CIC and a victim to the class as well. So that was kind of our command post team. We also had staff. He was very involved in 2 areas, Tolbert and Springs. So we had assistant directors and area quarters in Tolbert Springs. Calvin mentioned we were doing roommate and suite mate notifications. We're waiting on word from the family that his sister found out. So we were trying to figure out the student's class schedule. So the counselor and assistant director and area coordinator were all in an office waiting for word that we can share the news, and then trying to figure out their class schedule, and then trying to get them in to meet them. Those meetings are horrible, too, by the way. But that's why it's good to have the director of the counseling center there, sure. Some other housing staff that we needed to just let know what was going on, as soon as we possibly could, was the resident assistants. All of our operations at building services that are going to see students that are affected by these crisis situations, and even the building services, sometimes they get to know our residents just as well as the RA sometimes. To let them know. The maintenance staff as well, and if it's a self-injurious behavior, if it's a suicide in a room, the maintenance staff's going to have a different role. And so is building services. We also reached out to our desk staff, which I'll go to in the next slide. And then also the area coordinators reached out to ROTC. We have peer mentors as well on floors, your ROTC peer mentor. And then the area coordinator also reserved the North Library. As soon as the student passes away, we know we are instinctive. We are having a community gathering to grieve that night. We will be inviting the whole community to grieve together that evening. Okay. Hiring flyers. We set up a point person to keep track of all the calls and the emails. We wanted to close the loop on the people need to follow up and those need to reach out to. We also wanted to let them know that, at least for a long time, at least until 1 p.m., we didn't have any information to give people. Not many people called. But sometimes the media might start calling, the president might start calling. We would direct them to our lead office. We have somebody in housing named Sharon Blansett, and Sharon Blansett deals. She always communicates with our media. She's wonderful. She is our point person for the media. But we would refer all calls from the main housing reception. So we have a student that sits at the desk that might get a phone call and get asked about this. We have an office manager that oversees all the full-time desk clerks. So to communicate to the area desk, this has happened. Here's who you refer people if anyone asks any questions. And then to our graduate hall directors and our resident assistant staff, we want them to know as soon as possible this has happened. Here's who you refer people if you hear people calling. Also for our RA staff, just someone might have known him, and just so we can bridge that gap, so we can find that web of who needs help. That's support and intervention. Okay. By 10 a.m. we had another room for Layden's roommate. We had another room found in case they wanted it. First thing, just going back to that room. Some people can do it, some people can't, but it's usually a pretty difficult task. So we do find another room automatically, a nice room for them to go to. Once again, I told you we were waiting for the notification from the family that Linda's sister found out, so she wouldn't get surprised by the news and class on Facebook. We got the all clear from the dean's office to send out all the emails to everybody. The director of Res Life immediately started securing boxes and tape just for whenever, we're not going to bring up packing up the room to the family, but that's coming. Like that day's coming. So we started securing boxes, buying them the nicest boxes possible, the tape, just so they don't have to worry about anything. And then another thing that's also in this particular situation, a memorial of some variety to memorize the student who passed away. That starts getting planned right away. There's people that actively start planning that, the assistant directors and area coordinators.
One of the things that we make sure that we do afterwards, and we mentioned make your copy of essentially the template that we type pretty much a lot of our actions into. If you're interested in that, we can definitely get you that afterwards. But pretty much everything that we kind of just went through, that's documented in the template so that we have written account of every action that we took. So not for any other purpose other than to try to get better, right? Because once again, this is one situation in which you don't want to be terrible. We do that for the sole purpose of trying to get better. So we look back on those particular situations to see, all right, what was good about it? What were our challenges? What was unexpected? What were we not ready for that we'd not seen before? And go through those things. So a lot of things, when we first started doing it, we noticed that small thing, tissues, we did not have those at the community. So we made sure to have those at future ones that we had because, of course, people are emotional. There are going to be tears and things of that nature. You want to make sure that you're being accommodated. Water, I want to make sure we have plenty of that on hand as well. Feeding those that are on the scene and responding to the community. These things are not scheduled. So depending on when they happen, you're in the mode of dealing with a particular conflict and not necessarily eating. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of those who are responding to the incidents. The resident email authority to send those after hours. During our business hours is a little bit easier. We have to get special permission to do those after hours. And once again, it takes time as well to send those. You want to look at the last draft of the paragraph of the email. Was it suicide? Was it something else? We want to make sure that we're being very accurate in our reporting of this. And so we do put in the email to the community, as well as to all the residents, if it was suicide. This is something that our public relations person said, you may think you don't want to necessarily do this, but if you don't, then it's going to be essentially be looked at as reporting false information. So it's better to be honest with the community, or the other students, when reporting reporting on these particular types of incidents.
And for that one also, one time my wife works in housing, but she doesn't work in residence life. So she didn't know what was going on like I did. And she came home and she said, I'm sorry someone took their life today. I got the email. I was like, well, no one took their life today. No, they passed away. And she goes, oh, well, the last paragraph of the email made it seem like maybe you could have said if you need additional assistance or if you're hurting, we have counselors for you to talk to, but it was referring to you taking care of yourself, not if you were contemplating suicide yourself. So it got misconstrued. So if you looked at that last paragraph and said, let's change it up and be accurate.
So we also look at crowd control and transporting. This is something very real that we dealt with as far as UPD and creating barriers. More staff to help do crowd control. Utilize as many RLE staff as we can, or housing and residence education staff as we can. Do we want to get the university protesting involved just to have more bodies that are there to kind of help out with the situation? One of the more important things that we dealt with one of the student deaths that we had there was think about the time in which, when the coroner's office comes there and they're taking out the body. Don't want to do that during the time when they're changing classes. And that was something that we were very fortunate to have someone from the Dean of Students office there who was very cognitive of when classes are going to change. And the coroner's office was about to wheel the body out right at the height of classes changing. Well, there are going to be a lot of residents out there moving back and forth from classes. And so thank God for them, because they came back in and they said, wait about 10 or 15 minutes, because right now there are a lot of students outside and this is all we need. They're already talking about the vehicle that's outside. So a couple of cases also, we want to be in contact with them to say, if you can, show up in an unmarked vehicle as much as possible to kind of help us out in the situation. But that was one of the things that we made sure we wanted to think of as far as what time, day, and night is this occurring. And once we are taking the body out, we don't want too many people around to witness that. Class time is scheduled in the binder, so we do create a binder for this as well. So I mentioned the template that we have. Make sure we put down which time of day was as far as what classes were taking place, and then do all the senior consultants respond. Generally, in this particular case, as you can imagine, we're gonna have people who want to respond. Do we need all of them in certain situations? Maybe not. Do we use them? Probably so. So we assess that as well, as far as how many people we had, how many people we had wanting to respond, and all those things. Other things, as far as do we monitor social media? You bet we do monitor social media. So we actually have someone in our admin services team who we are in frequent contact with to kind of see what's on the parents' Facebook page. What are the office? But we want to make sure we're covering all our bases as far as that. What's on Twitter and things of that nature, so we can kind of know what's out there, which makes our reporting of that particular incident all the more important, because as you can imagine, people, when they don't necessarily know certain things, their minds start to go different places and they start reporting false facts. And so we want to make sure that we can see what's out there, so we know what to record. Becomes all the more important. We also have graduate and family housing, pretty far in graduate and family housing on our campus. So we thought about how would this situation be different if it were a graduate and family housing staff member or student, as opposed to a single student housing. And single student housing would mean traditional residence hall, suites, and apartments that are on campus. So we know that as far as those students, they have labs, not necessarily in general classrooms as undergraduate students are. They're closer to the advisors and professors. A good 82% of our graduate and family housing is international students. So what are some things that, with traditional American students who live in single student housing, what are some things different as far as reporting of the death, notifying family members, and things of that nature? What are some things that are going to be different and deal with international students as opposed to single student housing students? As well as be aware of content. Each resident issue obviously will be different, but just to make sure that we're reporting the correct content. Ryan mentioned packing the room. It is helpful that we found that when someone outside of the community is helping to do this. So if it happened in the Tolbert area, we may want someone other than the area coordinator, the graduate hall director, or do this. Main reason because they're going to be dealing with this particular situation long after it has happened. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them somewhat of a break in dealing with it. So a lot of times we will have either someone from another area to be the ones to do this, or even myself and an assistant director from Graduate and Family Housing. So people who are somewhat removed from that particular area to kind of come in and take care of that. So that someone from that particular area does not necessarily have to. We also, just to once again create some emotional distance for them as well. The acknowledgement piece, kind of what we did at the beginning of this particular presentation, we tried to do that at the next staff meeting or the next gathering of some sort, even after the community meeting or before the community meeting. We try to have some type of acknowledgement, generally a moment of silence or some other acknowledgement, but we make sure, especially with professional staff who may not have been there, to kind of inform them of what happened, but also once again to pay our homage to losing a member of our community that we have.
It's also just not cool to start talking about your budget shortfall
Exactly.
when somebody in your community just died. So just to acknowledge that we're hurting and grieving.
The handout that we're going to give you at the end of this, after Ryan finishes going through some resources that we have, pretty much goes through, once again, everything that we just talked about. But this is essentially the checklist that we use when going through this. So notification, assessment, aftercare, all those things that deal with it are exact wording in our particular protocol. And you'll notice that it was last updated in September of 2012. That's not necessarily saying we've not done our due diligence since then, but this was very well thought out, and a lot of things went into this. We're probably going to revise it here pretty soon, but this still works for us as far as what we do at UF and things that we take care of. So we'll probably revise it a little bit, but at this particular moment in time, it still pretty much works for us. So.
Yeah, we also get together a couple weeks after an incident. When students passed away and talk about it. We go through our checklist. Somebody's keeping a running total of this, of everything that we're doing. Somebody's taking meticulous notes. But we get through and go through those notes a couple weeks later when we're a little bit removed from the situation, but yet it's still fresh enough on our brains that we can be critical of ourselves and how the situation went. I think it's so important. It's so vital to look at yourselves and say, how do we do in this and what can we do better and what could happen next time? And every situation is different. All right, resources. The book report. So did want to tell you there are I have 6 books up here. You're welcome to look at them. These are some great resources. Manage the Unthinkable. These are basically, this book here is reflections of campus leaders on tragedies. The tragedies range from large-scale tragedies. So we're talking Texas A&M, the bonfire. We're talking the Virginia Tech active shooter. They looked at the Oklahoma State plane crash with the basketball team on board. It looked at natural disasters such as Alabama Tuscaloosa's EF4 tornado a few years ago. It looked at a variety of storm and weather conditions that happened at Oklahoma State from 2008 to 2012. It put a graph in of, it talks about insurance. It talked about how much insurance Oklahoma State had and how $10 million worth of damage was done to their buildings from just a variety of hailstorms and all kinds of things from 2008, 2012 to floods, to droughts, to tornadoes. And then they got about $3 million back. So it goes into about everything you can think of when it comes to a large scale crisis on a campus. A large scale crisis happens to many humans. It also talked about a tornado that happened at Gustavus Adolphus in Minnesota. It did about $60 million of damage, and the media reported right away this campus will never recover from this tragedy. And the university president came out and said, we'll be back in 3 weeks. And they were. He did not let the media write the narrative. So it talked about dealing with the media. It talks about everything in a large scale crisis. There's chapters about everything you can imagine. Some nuggets of information. They said we are all, this is true for an individual level or a major level, at a university that we work at, when we work at an institution, we are all either dealing with a crisis, we're in crisis mode, or we are in pre-crisis mode. You're in one or the other at all times. So what are you doing in pre-crisis mode? You're here, so that's good. What are you doing in pre-crisis mode to be ready for crisis mode? I thought that was good. He also said, Oklahoma State administrator, when talking about the disasters that were happening on their campus, it said disasters don't wait for data to unfold. They require rapid decision making in context of uncertainty. Ray Bowen was the president of Texas A&M during the bonfire that killed many students. Ray Bowen offered 2 nuggets. There are so many nuggets of good advice in managing the unthinkable, I can't tell you, but I just wanted to quote a couple. He said, surround yourself with people who have a huge amount of common sense and take advice from them. Take advice from lawyers, but don't allow them to make the decisions for you. Doing the right thing, and you're going to hear that a lot in the next couple minutes, doing the right thing is far more important than worrying about and preempting any legal fallout that may ensue as a result of the crisis. This meeting by Gene Shadarsky, I've worked with Gene, Norb Dunkel, I worked with Norb, Michael Rollo, I just missed him at the University of Florida, and associates in 2007. They wrote this book called Campus Crisis Management. Once again, this is on large scale crisis. There are practical handouts, there's checklists, there's resources, there's examples, sample forms, there's a crisis matrix that is awesome. In this book, there's so many examples they go through. They go through examples such as UT Austin in 1966, Penn State shooting in 1970. I think her name was Jean Cleary in Lehigh in 1986. A serial killer visited Gainesville, Florida in 1990, killed 5 students. Hurricane Andrew, they talk about Illinois, Champaign, Urbana in 1991-92. There was a meningitis, I believe it was, that went through their campus for 2 years. Northridge earthquake, Wyoming, Texas A&M in 1999. They talk about September 11th in New York and Baltimore. Just many, many large-scale crises all the way down to Katrina and Oklahoma State. It's a great book with a ton of different examples. They plug into their crisis matrix and kind of show you how to deal with crisis situations. That's a wonderful resource as well. There's other chapters that are on crisis management, developing a plan, coming up with a communication plan, and working with emergency personnel and outside agencies. Dr. Wayne Griffin wrote a chapter on psychological first aid, and then there's chapters on crisis training, facility crisis, human crisis. Fantastic book. The final resource I want to share with you is called Crisis Management Responding from the Heart. Again, Gene Jardesky, Brent Patterson, and Katie Harper. This book, Doing the Right Thing, is the main theme of the book. Doing the right thing. I can't tell you how many times I read those words, the right thing, in this book. I loved it because I'm an F, obviously, and it talked about giving feelings the same level of importance as giving your policies and procedures, but being there as a human being for the people. There are practical crisis response models and real stories from responders, parents, partners, vice presidents, real life examples of doing the right thing. We have time. All right, so I'm kind of sad we have time because I have read this 10 times, and I do want to read just a quick chapter from a parent. I brought the tissues, so I'm going to cry. I've read this 10 times. I've cried all 10 of them. There's no way I'm not crying, but during this example. But it is, what I really want you to walk away with is a voice from the parents. This is Dennis and Kathy Clockentager. They were the parents of Mark at Texas A&M in 1999. This was hard on myself. It's going to be hard here. So, all right, so I'm going to read you. So it's 4 pages. I encourage you all to read all 4 pages. I'm going to read about 4 paragraphs. Okay? It's a privilege for us to participate in this collaborative effort. If we help just one family, it was a worthwhile endeavor. We feel blessed to have a forum like this to talk about our son. There are 2 universal truths about parents who have lost a child. Number 1, parents love to talk about their children who have died. As long as they're remembered, they're really not gone. Number 2, parents who have lost children don't ever get over it. The lucky ones learn to cope with the new reality and carve out a new life. As 2 people who have spent time working with parents who have lost children, we can say that the ones who seem to survive the tragedy are those who have no regrets about their relationship with their child and have a sense of spirituality. Our son Mark, okay, so I'll summarize a couple paragraphs. Their son was born in New York. He died at College Station, Texas, and he's buried in Iowa. He loved track. His track coach told him that he may never have won a single race, but he raced with more heart than anybody he ever coached. He went to Catholic school. He had a great sense of humor. He graduated in the top 5% of his high school class. Mark also, time he was 10 years old, just knew he was destined for great success. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound on September 10th, 1999. He didn't even know. They talked to Mark about every day. He got a job working with the Alumni Association where he'd call people and ask for money the night he shot himself. He called his parents and said, Dad, I've been asking you for money my whole life, and I got so good at it, they're going to pay me at the university to do it. So I get to call people and ask them to part ways with their money now. But they really had no idea, but they were just happy that the last words we said were, I love you. 2 weeks before his death, he applied for law school. And they didn't let the law schools that he applied to know that he was dead. So just to see if he would get accepted, and he did. He got accepted to a lot. They're happy about that. So here, I'll continue reading right here. After we were notified of Mark's death, we headed to College Station to claim his body. We first, oh gosh, this is hard. Okay, so this is a good one. All right. We first met with the College Station police, who informed us that we would not be able to see him or his body until the next day at the funeral home. The toughest, most unforgivable night of our lives. We have never before or since felt so alone. We were totally overwhelmed by the circumstances, with seeming no outlet for relief. The next day, at the funeral home, we were met by one of Mark's best friends and his family. They had the foresight to contact someone from Student Life, so that a representative of Texas A&M was there. Looking back through the filters of time and distance, we can see that the presence of that Student Life representative set the tone for everything else that followed. From that point on, our load became lighter, and we began to see glimpses of daylight outside of our shroud of darkness. We assumed that Mark's death, which was front page news in the school newspaper, would be perceived as a negative statistic and a liability to the image of the university, and that the university would act very clinically to quickly, quietly, cleanly, and unemotionally tie up any loose ends and distance itself from the tragedy and any stigma associated with it. We felt that Texas A&M had no moral obligation beyond handling the business portions of the relationship, that is to disenroll them, notify professors, hand refunds for tuition and room and board. And to our relief, that is not what happened. In fact, the university has treated us with great humanity from the very first meeting at the funeral home until the next day, until this very day. Texas A&M fostered a very real sense of community and shared responsibility for our tragedy and our outcome. The Student Life representative who met us at the funeral home became our point of contact for any questions we had, and believe me, as parents who lost a child, we had many questions. The representative walked the walk with us through everything that followed. We cannot emphasize how important it is to have one person, one caring person, through whom we could funnel all our questions and requests. We always received honest, accurate, and timely responses. They go on to say a lot more in this chapter, but they give 6 pieces of advice to us in the room. Always remember that you don't get a second chance to do it right. It being how the tragedy is dealt with from the initial notification on. 2, inject yourselves early in a sincere and earnest manner. It is incumbent on the university to help frame the response. Early interventions and assistance is critical in determining the ultimate outcome of the parent's perspective. Their perception of reality as if the university will live on, right or wrong. 3rd, provide a readily available, sympathetic, and caring single point person for all questions for the bereaved, and leave no questions unanswered. 4, provide heartfelt, genuine opportunity for grieving with both public and private. To all those who are affected by the death, let the parents dictate their response to the university and community offering support. Don't coerce participation. Be compassionate, caring, and don't worry about being politically correct. And then finally, in striking a balance between institutional legality and spiritual nurturing, err on the side of nurturing. To me, sorry, I knew that was gonna be a mess, but I love that chapter. That chapter, that book had me crying all 10 times I read it. What I want to leave you with is a sense of just being there for that family, being there for that community. If you've worked at the University of Florida, and many of you haven't, you know Dr. Art Sandine. He is a legend there. He is, some people call him Poppy, Pappy. He's just a wonderful human being. He wrote a chapter in this book too. He wrote the voice of the vice president. So he's the vice president of student affairs. When in Gainesville, he said, he leaves with 5 points. 1, it is our job to handle crisis situations and to handle them well. 2, all student affairs can contribute to crisis management. We all have a role we can play. Number 3, written plans are very important, but effective relationships are key. And he was talking about reflection with the dean's office, with the police, anybody that might be able to form those relationships, have a crisis plan going with them. 2, no murders need apply. I don't have time to talk. Everyone has a role. There might be some people that are too emotional, that are too close to the situation. Don't put them in the packing the room situation. If they're going to take the attention, it's about the parents, it's about the student. Be nice to your staff and don't put them in that situation. And then there's some people that aren't good at dealing with crisis. There might be some people that you have that just aren't going to be good at this. And then the final point is, an institution will reveal its soul during a crisis situation. So, thank you. We do have time for questions. If anyone has anything? Do you have any time? Yes, Marcus.
So you mentioned you want to get all the communication set.
Mm-hmm.
Look it over a few times, and your university or department can send this out to students. Do the parents get to see this communication before it's sent out to the student population, or is there any correspondence in regards to the parents?
Right. So generally, we have not showed it to the parents. If they've asked me, I personally have never been asked by a parent to see it.
Right.
But we'll see, we make sure that it's accurate and we make sure that it's very factual. But we do not send it to the parents. Once again, we've not necessarily had anyone ask about it also, but we assume also that the students are sharing it with their parents. And, you know, I mentioned we monitor our Facebook page, and we've seen that for the most part, all positives from the communications that they've read that their child has sent to them. And thank you to the University of Florida for sending it out, especially members, people who are not of that particular community. They said, thank you for letting us know this information. Very thoughtful of you to let everyone know that my son and my daughter is not in that particular community.
It's a good idea. Think about that, Mark. Any other questions? Kate.
I know it's ideal to follow like the protocol that's already in place and have their intentions to do so. But what's been your experience with kind of leakage of social media and students finding out before any type of official announcement has been made? I've seen that play out a couple of times. And how will you respond?
So, well, from the ones I've seen so far, it hasn't been terrible. People have been respectful, and late in the situation, nothing got out. There were a couple rumors that got out there about events that were happening that weren't, and we corrected them. But just to be engaged with those, I haven't seen too much on. Our students who took their own lives in the rooms even, I would say that didn't really get out.
So after we sent the initial email out to the community, there's a little bit of chatter out there, but once again, in this particular situation, it seems that pretty much everyone, even the students, are being respectful. So there's not any, there's not been, I've not seen any gruesome misportrayals of what actually happened. There's been saying, I think a member of the community or someone in a particular hall passed away, but I don't necessarily know. And so there's some of that false information out there, but generally it's still respectful and like that. A, they don't know a lot, but B, if they do know something, it's putting I thought this may have happened, or think that this is the case, or we got this email stating this, and things of that nature. But generally, there's going to be some of that. But once again, making sure that our communication, once we do send an email out, is factual to correct a lot of that. Because generally, once that email goes out, we don't get any more of social media pieces that are misrepresenting what actually happened.
What do you do in the case that it's a suicide and the parents don't want a memorial and they don't want it said that their child committed suicide? I run into that in a couple of different institutions.
We respect it. As far as the memorial piece, We always offer that up, especially for the students' office and residents' life office. But if that is not something that they want, we do honor that. Once again, not a whole lot. We probably need to do a better job of reaching out to the parents prior to constructing the email and sending it out, because it's a great point that they may not want it mentioned that their child committed suicide. That's something I'll take back to my public relations office and kind of see what they think about it. But we've not been encountered with that type of situation. But definitely, if someone were to call, I would think that probably email that was sent out.
Sorry. We just had one of those at LSU, and we don't actually know the cause of death for that student. And so we did have some of that rumor mill students decide to say whatever they think it is. And even with our RA staff, they would kind of do that. They make up, oh, did you used to pass away in one in other communities? It's like, knock it off. I'm just like trying to be respectful for that. But how do you manage that rumor mill and try to make sure that you're like trying to get a student to understand, like, please be respectful of this family, you know, be respectful of the student experience and the people who were there when it happened, especially when it happened on campus. How do you manage those rumors?
So a good bit of that is in our email, actually, is to be respectful of others. So if you are putting anything out there on social media, make sure that you have all the facts before putting that out there. The other thing is by word of mouth. So we have members of that particular community going door to door, talking to the residents and things of nature, giving them about as much as they can give them so that they'll have as much information as they possibly can with that. And if it's a situation in which we don't necessarily know the cause of death, we try to find out as soon as possible. We've known pretty much what the cause of others, not at UF, but at another university where I work, we didn't necessarily know the cause of it. And until we found out the cause of it, we did not send any information out because we wanted to make sure that we were reporting the correct thing. So,
Did you have the reading ceremony at LSU too for the community? Did you have some sort of a lot of the questions get answered at that. I found a lot of people that are curious to come to that.
Yeah, there's a session, they had a session with the staff and then another session with the community after it's all on the same day.
Okay.
But in terms of like an actual community, LSU hasn't done one before, but this year, like one massive session for all of the fallen tigers for the entire year.
I found that to be very helpful with them.
First, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to help with 8 in a very, very short career. So this has been very helpful. So I really do thank you. I'm a big advocate to get towards putting the cause in notification. My university is really pushing back on that. Putting advice on someone that is mid-level, early entry level, late entry level, mid-level, kind of push for that and how to really get
My advice being consult with your general counsel on this one, just on what they think is appropriate.
once again, our public relations office, which does consult with our general counsel, was very adamant. I remember the conversation, whether it was yesterday, you know, I put in there, we want factual information in there. We're not saying how it happened, so we're just saying that they did commit suicide. So the how, I think, is what they got stuck on. Is that saying that they committed suicide is fine, but not putting the how in there is what we decided was pretty much taking it too far. And so I'm of the agreement also that I think if we need to put that in there. Now, once again, parent piece, I'll take that back, and if they don't want it, then I think we'll take further measures for that. But I'm a big fan of putting factual information in those particular points of communication that I sent out. So yeah, so I would just say, like Ron said, consult with the public relations officer or general counsel as far as that is concerned.
I heard you mention tuition and fees. In Florida, do you adjust the housing and dining after students die?
We did.
Do you do the whole semester or just at the point?
It depends on, generally a lot of our fees are due at the beginning of the semester, probably like everybody else. And so I'll have to ask our.
Yeah, I don't know exactly either, to be honest. I know if we prorate or we get it all back.
Exactly.
I like think we get it all
least
back.
prorated, but I think we do.
We've done that, and it just depends on how far into the semester. You know, if it's $100, $200, it's gonna get knocked off, you get it all back. But that $100, $200 is not gonna make a difference. If it's 2 weeks from the semester, that's different. But it just kind of depends on everyone's needs.
So in what ways do you all support kind of those first responders in these crisis situations, so the rest, like RAs, grad staff, things like that. We have to forget about them.
So that's good. That community meeting that we have isn't just for it's for the RAs too. They're crying too. They're sad too. And who's upset, who needs help. We do send emails out to our staff. Who needs help? They know the resources they have, but we remind them was used to activating these resources of the CICs and the counselors. Don't forget to use them. They are for you too. So we do use our counselors for our RAs as well.
So if it's a member of our staff in RA or building services person or maintenance person, which we have had that happen, we're aware of who the first responders are, and we don't necessarily wait until the community meeting or further on in the day. We have counselors come out and they talk to them immediately. Hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything initially right now? And 9 times out of 10, they're in the moment of it, and so they'll talk to them. But for the most part, like Ron said, it's for the most part dealt in. And then we do have them kind of stay back and talk to the counselors as well after the community meetings that take place in the next week. Yes, ma'am.
It was along the same vein as that question. Do you include yourself as a part of this model, as in someone who also needs support? I'm sure people are support for others that want to make sure you're including yourself.
Absolutely. It's horrible. Yeah, it's horrible to deal with it. Always.
So I mentioned at one point for 3 of them that I was going to go back to the room. So after the 3rd one, it was just too much, and I had to leave along the rest of the day because it was just too much. And so yeah, we try to tell each other be self-aware also as far as how this is affecting you, and seek the help that you need. And obviously, we know more so than anybody else as far as the resources that are available. But oftentimes, when you're in it, you don't think of that. And so just it's a good thing that we have people to remind us to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, that's supervisor say that. Empathy runs strong in you, Ryan. How you doing over there? You're a crier. What's going on? So. Any other questions?
So, you're talking about packing up the room. Is that something that the true staff took care of and then just said, when the parents got there, here's the belongings before you let them to the parents?
So that's been different at different times. So sometimes it has been our staff packed up the room. Sometimes it's been we hand the parents the box. Sometimes the parents ask us, when we talk to them, they'll ask us, can you pack up the room for us? Or they'll want to do it themselves. Or they'll not want to do it, and the roommate really wants to do it. And then we don't give the roommate another roommate all year. Things like that, like anything you can do, like whatever you want to happen will happen. If you want me to go back to the room, I'll go back to the room. If you want to pack the room, I'll be there while you pack the room. If you want me to be gone while you pack the room, I'll be gone. Like, what do you want? We will do it. So it's been different in every situation almost.
Two other situations, the parents thought, yes, we don't want anyone that's touching your stuff. They get to the room though, and each of those times they said, no, we can't do it. Another situation in which the father, he just said, I just want the baseball gloves. And he came in on the baseball gloves and said, you guys are back.
Have you ever had a problem or ran into a problem where you couldn't get a hold of the family right away? And then how did that delay your action plan?
The police couldn't reach them. The police will contact the local police wherever they are, and the local police will go find them. It hasn't been a problem.
That's not, and generally it's the police or the sheriff's office who notify them, and we've been fairly lucky in that they've been able to do that.
There was a time where one of the parents was on vacation or something, and it did take a while, but it was done within 4 hours.
Mom was in New York,
Yeah.
and so, but there was another local family member that was closer to campus and nearby.
One last one. Yes, ma'am.
So I know that you talked a ton about like, the immediate effects and how to solve that, but can you talk about efforts long term? So like weeks after or months after, how do you kind of rebuild that community? Or do you have any ideas about that? Because I know that's been the hardest part for me and my community. How do you get them back or into something different that's going to be productive?
So one good thing about our counseling center is that they do a lot of check-ins. And so they're saying to us a couple of weeks afterward, how's the community? Are there any long-term issues or any recurring issues? So we also have different layers. So we have the RAs, especially on those particular floors in that building, keeping track of it as well, and we reach back out to them, as well as area professional staff. We also, within our on-call protocol, we have students of concerns list. And so each time if we know about, once we're dealing with a difficult situation, we've got an issue with a particular student who's having a hard time dealing with it, they're on that list. So if anything happens with them, the staff who are dealing with it are notified to immediately call the senior consultant so we can jump on it fairly quickly. But it's for the most part our counseling and wellness center who does a lot of follow-up, at least a couple weeks after the incident, just to check in and see, hey, how things going, which prompts us a lot of times to reach out to the RE, to reach out to the graduate law coordinator, to reach out to their AD coordinator just to follow up and check in. All those times also, we have 4 meetings with them after the counseling and wellness center can be there if we want them to. But it all kind of just depends. But we do let them know that, this is not going to end right now. Tomorrow, the day after that, any given point you need help, please reach out to us. And we've asked students to reach out to housing professionals, undergraduate staff, graduate staff, as well as counseling and wellness center weeks afterwards. You can't do that. But our counseling and wellness center does a really good job of kind of keeping tabs on us what after the incident has happened to kind of remind us that the situation didn't end that day or the day after that. There could be still some effects.
Just going to throw one more in that I've used in the past. I'll go to the roommates or the friends and ask, is there anything in the room that mom and dad shouldn't see? Occasionally parents will walk coming back up and there's some things maybe they shouldn't see.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are out of time.